You want to go on the deck or no?
No.
Oh.
Okay, we're recording now.
The babies are going to wake up.
Ready?
Oh no, it's gonna wake up.
Yep.
The elk have arrived.
Yes.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Looks perfect.
She's doing just fine.
So you want, and then you want to open in prayer, honey?
Yeah.
I'm gonna turn this so they can see you.
Need a screen. Or I'll leave it open about a couple of
Make sure you can see your face.
It'll drop.
You have to go.
Yeah, I can.
Put your finger at the top and push it up. They'll all come together.
Uh-oh, who did it? Whoever did it gets to grab the baby.
Shofar blowers.
Get them babies, you guys.
Now, you can tell me if that gets too close. Okay.
He's gonna open in prayer and then
And then if I pause, then if anybody has something they want to say.
add to.
If I pause too long, like that's just jumping.
Got it.
It's just what?
Chime in and pray.
Abba, Father, Tada for your blessings, for your bringing us together. And I ask that you will include us. Thank you for your provision.
Lord, we come before you in praise and glory. Thanking you for all of your plan, all of your will. Teach us some more, grow us up some more today in this study. In Jesus' name.
We're going to be filled to overflowing.
Yes.
Let your spirit fall. Thank you for opening our hearts and minds. Thank you for the family that was looking for a home, and the offer fell through, so there's look for something to save back, something that they need, where they can go, where they don't have to be paying a rent and a landlord hovering over them. Let it be in your hands and speak to them and that, and we let that be your way. Let us press into you. Let us bring positive things. Let our words be salted and be positive and kindness.
Abba, I pray that that your kingdom would become so real to us. We would not be focused on the things of this world, and help us, Abba, as we communicate with our brothers and sisters who are so focused on the end of the world happening and all the terrible things that are supposed to happen now, that the fear that rises up in people and they want to promote that. But I ask that you would give us the courage to know how to communicate with them and declare your kingdom and help us to see the realities of you.
Yes.
And bless this Shabbat. Bless the children. Bless my Yedidia, and as he ministers to the kids, and also this as we read out of Josephus, help us to see that the way they had it then, oh my goodness, we have it good now. And we seem to think that it's getting worse and worse. I can beg to differ now after reading Josephus. So I want to thank you and praise you for what you are doing in the earth. I praise you, Abba, because you're great and awesome, and you are mighty indeed, and your kingdom is growing. And I want to thank you for that. And bless this day in Yahushua HaMashiach.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
Let it be.
We're going to read a scripture?
Yeah, I will.
Ephesians what?
Yeah, Ephesians 2 and
Ephesians.
You're going to Ephesians first?
yeah, Ephesians
Yeah.
2 and
It's like our devotion, I guess. He wants to.
I found this and I found the other one, but it's based on the seeds of the and growing, and it's a little advanced because it's speaking of growing, but it's not talking about seeds. It's talking about our faith and our walk with Yahweh. So, and it's starting at 19 to 22. To the end, yes.
Just a minute. It takes a minute to find it in this book.
Yeah, it's at the bottom.
17, 18. Oh, 19 through 22, you said? Alrighty. Go.
It says the church, Yahweh's temple. Now, therefore, you are no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of Yahweh. That's the Mishpachah family. Having been built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Yahushua HaMashiach himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom the whole building being fitted together grows into a holy temple in Yahweh, in whom you also are being built together for a dwelling place of Yahweh in the Spirit. In the Ruach HaKodesh.
I'd like to read a little bit of Ephesians 1. 21, verse 21. Verse 20, sorry. Which he wrought in Christ, okay, I'm not going to go back. When he raised him from the dead and set him in his own right hand in the heavenly places, far above all principality and power and might and dominion, and every name that is named, not only in the world, but also in that which is to come, and hath put all things under his feet, and giveth him to be the head over all things in the church, which is the body, the fullness of him that filleth all in all.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, that's good as well. But
That kind of ties in with what you were saying.
Yeah.
yeah, it sure does.
You notice he's building the temple up to make us a dwelling place for him in the Spirit. So he's building us up. He's building the temple up so that he can dwell.
Yeah.
That's what I saw when he read that last
In
night.
my Father's house are many mansions. I go to prepare.
Yeah.
He's preparing a place for him to dwell.
Exactly. He's not building us each a mansion on the hill.
We are the mansion. He's turning us into the mansion.
For him to dwell. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that feels
That's
good.
when he read that, I was, dude, read that again.
And the only other
Yeah.
one, I'll just mention it. You can study on. Yeah, Colossians 2 as well. Colossians 2 through 10.
2 through 10.
Oh, just read it.
Sure, it is good. This is
2 what?
2 through 10. 2 through 10.
Is that after Ephesians?
Yeah.
Backwards.
I'm
It
losing.
is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it goes,
Ephesians, Colossians.
There we go. Okay.
there's Philippians in between. I think.
Two.
But
Okay.
in between the books. So this
I've
is
lost Colossians. There we
this
are.
this says not human philosophies, but the Messiah's. Set it for now. So it's Paul. He's writing to I think Laodicea,
Laodicea.
and he's saying, "I am. Yet you haven't seen me in the flesh." See, it says, "So as for many has not seen my face in the flesh, that their hearts may be encouraged, being knit together in love and attaining to all riches of the full assurance of understanding to the knowledge of the mystery of Yahweh, both the Father and of the Messiah, in whom are hidden all treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Now this I say, lest anyone should deceive you with persuasive words. For though I am absent in the flesh, yet I am with you in the spirit, rejoicing to see your good order and steadfastness of your faith in the Messiah. As you therefore have received the Messiah, Yahusha, so walk in him, rooted and built up in him and established in the faith as you have been taught, abounding in it with thanksgiving. Beware lest anyone cheat you through philosophy and empty deceit, according to the tradition of men, according to the basic principles of the world, and not according to the Messiah. For in him dwells all the fullness of the deity bodily. And you are complete in him who is the head of all principality and power. So,
Read the next one, because that's stopping in the middle of the sentence.
well, yeah, because it goes into another idea.
Oh, okay.
Goes into that's the idea there. In the being rooted and built up in him and established
Right.
in the faith,
Yes.
Men.
Yes.
as you have been taught.
Oh, wow.
And beware lest anyone cheat you through
Yes.
And
philosophy and
who is he
empty
talking
deceit.
to?
Yes.
This is Paul as he's talking to the
Jews in
church
Laodicea.
of Laodicea.
Wow.
This is a letter to them.
Who have been taught by those nasty priests and Sadducees and what's the other one? Pharisees and Sadducees about human laws, not God's laws.
Empty deception. I love that.
Yeah, that was a
Wow.
good find.
That's it.
According to the elements of the world and not according to.
Say you like yourself?
Oh,
Six,
Olivia wanted some
six,
because she didn't get it.
6 through 8 would have been the summary there
That is so
See the whole
good.
hole over
because being rooted was my word that I found, and like just a jewel in between. It's like, oh, that's fabulous. Well, I'll leave you with that.
Oh, thank you.
That was good. Thank you, Jenny.
And,
But now you have to peel the girls away from the cartoon.
Yeah.
yeah,
Or let them watch it for a little while.
Okay. Okay. We are going to turn to Revelation chapter 6.
Are we on 6 for
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're
We
on
are?
6.
It's loaded.
It's loaded, and I don't know if we'll get through the whole thing today.
we're gonna fly on it.
All right.
Okay. Happy landing.
My hubby's rising up.
Great. Great.
Eventually, he'll be taking over my job, and I won't have to do this. Yeah. Yeah.
But you're cuter. We like to see your
I don't know.
face.
He's cute.
That was creepy here.
Well, that's your
Okay. You're still there, Carol, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Is her
See-
husband with her this morning?
Yeah, John's there.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
You're okay. So we're are you guys turned to Revelation 6?
Yes.
Okay. So we're gonna read the first seal. Hey, John, do you want to read for us the first seal from 6:1 to 6:2? 2 verses.
All right. I saw the Lamb open up one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying, as with a voice of thunder, "Come and see." And behold, a white horse, and he who sat on it had a bow. A crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer.
Okay. So now we have all been taught the future perspective of this. So could you guys give me a little insight on what you have taught this was about? This first seal?
Me?
Any of you?
Nothing.
Actually, they didn't teach from Revelation very much.
Okay,
So the
so
seal represents the church. I think.
from a future perspective. Okay, if we back up in chapter 5, it talks about Yahusha, but it talks about the scroll that could not be opened.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually, remember I said it was the book in Daniel that was sealed up to the time of the end.
Mm-hmm.
So now the seals are being opened, and the scrolls were, it was round, and each, like the king would stamp a seal on it,
Right.
and then each
those
roll,
seals.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they
Okay,
had,
gotcha.
and nobody was worthy to open it except for the Lamb. So he opened the seal, and it unrolled it a certain length, and then there was another seal,
Right.
and then there was another seal. And
Oh, okay. All
it's
right.
one
Oh, it
scroll,
wasn't like one scroll with seals right
No.
there. Oh,
one
okay.
scroll, and then it.
Well, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Does that make sense? Yeah,
Yes.
with several. So he unrolled one. He read that one. Then he unrolled another one.
And
He
then
read that.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. Okay. So we had always in my mind when I read this, I always said this was all for the future.
Right.
That this was some horrible time that was
End
going to
time.
come over the earth,
Yeah.
and each one of these horses was some horrible event
Mhm.
that struck terror inside my soul, even though I didn't want to say that out loud. Okay, and and I didn't want to have to live through or see this.
Right.
So, coming to this new understanding, it's just awesome. And that actually this all already happened. And we're going to read from Josephus today what the white horse is.
Cool.
In the Wars, Book 3, Chapter 1, Paragraph 2. So you guys can write that down. So if in the future you want to read it or talk to anyone about it.
This is in
Josephus, Book of the Wars, or the Jewish War,
And so we're going to the Jewish War.
Book 3, Chapter 1.
Jewish War, wait. Chapter 1.
Paragraph 2.
Oh, he said 3:1.
3, 1, 2. Book 3,
Yeah.
Chapter 1,
Oh. And then
Paragraph 2.
2.
Okay. So this is what I'm reading out of, guys.
Yeah. I don't have one.
Okay.
They're
So-
pretty cheap on Amazon or.
And they're also
Bookstore,
online.
if
You
you
can
get
get them
any.
online for free.
Oh,
You can read this
are there
online.
different ones?
Oh.
Some.
Is there one in modern
That's my
English?
problem when I go to
I
look
don't
for a
know.
book. You
I
don't
don't
know
know.
which one is the most accurate. Or,
Oh, I'll try to.
Well,
Right.
there's no copyright on this on Josephus, so
Really?
these were written by him. So
Oh,
there's no copyright anymore.
great.
So you
Yeah.
okay?
Tell me about copyright. And ask me about copyright.
Okay. So I'm going to read straight from Josephus, and he says, "And as he was deliberating to let me back up and tell you what's going on. This is from February 67, which is 3.5 years before Jerusalem fell. And Nero, there's an uprising in Jerusalem, and Rome was in charge of the entire civilized world.
Right.
And there was just more and more turmoil. So Nero had to appoint somebody to go and settle down the unrest in Jerusalem. And so exactly 3.5 years before Jerusalem fell, he appointed Vespasian.
Okay, Vespasian.
Okay. It says, and as he was deliberating to whom he should commit to care of the East, now it was in so great a commotion, and who might be best able to punish the Jews for their rebellion, and might prevent the same sickness from seizing upon the neighboring nations also. He found no one but Vespasian equal to the task and able to undergo the great burden of so mighty a war, seeing he was growing an old man already in the camp, and from his youth had been exercised in warlike exploits. He was also a man that had long ago pacified the West and made it subject to the Romans, when it had been put into disorder by the Germans. He had also recovered from the Britain by his arms, which had been little known before, whereby he procured to his father Claudius to have a triumph bestowed on him without any sweat or labor of his own. So the white horse, the one sitting on the white horse is Vespasian, and his son is Titus. So Vespasian appointed Titus over the region to take over Jerusalem. So that's where we get Nero, Vespasian, Titus. Okay? And
how does the white horse tie in?
okay, listen. Okay, if we go back and reread 6:1 and 2.
Yeah.
And I saw the Lamb open one from out of the 7 seals, and I heard one from out of the 4 living creatures saying, as a sound of thunder, "Come and see." And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and one sitting upon it, having a bow, and so meaning war.
Yeah.
And was given to him a crown, so authority.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And he went forth conquering. Mine says overcoming, and that he should overcome. And he did overcome. He did conquer.
So was White Horse?
The white horse is not in here.
Josephus?
White horse is just a representative. And actually that comes from, I have it written down. I don't have my notes out.
So white horse.
All the
Horse
different
doesn't
horses
mean
are
war.
representative.
Horse doesn't mean war.
No.
I mean the bow,
No.
the weapon.
But see, the royalty rode white horses.
Power.
It's about power. It's representative. and who's going to look? Zechariah. In Zechariah, you'll find the different horses.
Okay.
So it's represent. So now John's going back into the prophecy in Zechariah. If you guys
Okay.
I have Zechariah 1:8 written down and 6:2 through 6.
I'm gonna put that right here.
Yeah,
In the same chapter 2 through 6, you said?
6. Chapter 6, 2 through 6.
What was the one?
Zechariah 1:8.
8 and then 2 and then
And Zechariah 6,
6.
2 through 6. Yeah.
And that was the
That would be for all the
horses,
horses.
for the horse. Okay.
All the horses
So
of
we
the
can
seals.
understand what he's
So you can
talking
kind of
about.
understand.
Okay.
So if
Sorry, I was waiting for White Horse
The white-
and
sorry.
Josephus. So,
Sorry,
okay.
the white horse, no. Vespasian was the one riding on the white horse.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay?
And the white horse, the guy, one coming on the white horse, you know, that's the leader. That's the.
Yeah. He's
you
the
know,
authority,
he's
the
authority
crown,
figure.
the king, you know. Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay. So then we go on to the next horse. Who wants to read 6:3 to 4?
I will.
Okay.
And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, "Come and see." And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword.
Okay. So we had so now we had the bow in the white horse and the authority from kingly authority to come and officially take over. Now the second fiery horse, mine says fiery horse, that was a rebellion that rose up. If you think of a wildfire, red,
Okay.
just,
Okay.
yeah, I can just imagine.
Like they just committed in California.
So if we turn, this happened in the second seal. Is a civil war breaks out, just like in Isaiah 19:1 through 4, and it happened in the fall or winter of 67 A.D. And a brutal war between revolutionaries and those who wanted to maintain peace with Rome. There was three factions. Eleazar, however you say his name. Eleazar, the Zealots, John of Gershala, and he was over the Galileans, and Simon over the Idumeans. And it was so bad that in one night they killed 8,500 people. 8,500 people in one night. So we can turn to wars.
They, meaning who?
All these people
Romans?
killing each other. No,
Oh,
the Romans
this
weren't
is
even
the-
part of
This
it.
is inside.
This is inside. These are all Jews inside
Okay.
the Civil
Wow.
War.
Okay.
So the fiery horse is so
Is-
the white horse is
He got sent out because of the fiery horse.
little bit. I
Put
think
out the
this
fire.
is- okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so Wars 2:18 to 18. Wars, Book 2, Chapter 18, and Paragraph 2. So if you want to write that down.
Wars, Book 2.
So this actually precedes, this is the whole reason why the White Horse came out.
Okay, so this is Wars, Book 2,
What else?
Chapter 18. And
Paragraph
Paragraph 2.
2. I think that's a paragraph, son.
So, okay, so my feeble mind is confused about this because the red horse comes after the
I know.
white horse.
I know.
So,
But because it's
really,
all
the red-
overlapping. But see, the red horse started that was the whole reason why the white horse came out in real history.
Oh,
Okay. That's the whole reason why
And
it
that's what
came
that
out.
says.
Well,
Because
I'm going to
remember she
read
read
to you.
that it
Yeah,
everything was disruptive, and so
Yeah.
yeah.
Nero sent out Titus. No.
Vespasian.
Vespasian. To
Vespasian
quell
appointed
it because they were.
yeah.
And he was the one on the white horse.
Okay.
Okay.
He
Yeah.
was one on the white
And
horse.
so now I'm going to read to you an example of some of that.
Okay.
And that would be in, okay,
Speaker go off.
I don't know. Carol, say something. I want to see if our speaker still works.
Yeah, it's still working.
Yep, we can hear you. Okay. So this is chapter 18 in paragraph 2. It says, every city was divided into 2 armies, encamped one against another, and the preservation of the one party was in the destruction of the other. So the daytime was spent in shedding of blood, and the night in fear, which was of the 2 the more terrible. For when the Syrians thought that they had ruined the Jews, they had the Judaizers in suspicion also, and as each side did not care to slay those whom whom they only suspected on the other, so did they greatly fear them when they were mingled with the other, as if they were certainty foreigners. So they suspected, they had suspicion of the others, even though they were all Jews and one family and everything. They were all suspecting, oh, they're actually foreigners. They're not really us. Okay. Moreover, greediness of gain was provocation to kill the opposite party, even to such as had of old appeared very mild and gentle towards them. For they, without fear, plundered the effects of the killed and carried off the spoils of those whom they killed in their own houses, as if they had been gained in a set battle. And he was esteemed a man of honor who got the greatest share, as having prevailed over the greatest number of his enemies. It was then common to see cities filled with dead bodies, still lying unburied, and those of old men mixed with infants, all dead and scattered about together. Women also lay among them, without any covering for their nakedness. You might then see the whole province full of inexpressible calamities, while the dread of still more barbarous practices which were threatened was everywhere greater than what had been already perpetrated. And that's just one little example.
See, they did it to their own selves worse than what the Romans
Yeah.
Because they were
Yeah.
questioning everybody.
Well,
So they thought everybody
like
was.
civil upheaval, and there was a whole lot of there was those that were saying, let's just follow the Romans, let's just do what the Romans tell us to do. And then there was the rebels that rose up and said, no, we want our own freedom. We want to do this our way. We don't want to be under the Romans anymore.
And there was
And
no
then-
way to get
yeah.
out from under the Romans,
And then,
actually.
yeah. And then there was a zealot. And then they began to fight themselves so bad. It was horrible. There was things that, I don't know if I'll read it all today, but oh my goodness, just horrible, horrible things that they did to each other. And then once they got locked into Jerusalem itself, that battle just ensued inside, and the Romans had nothing to do. I mean, they were outside.
They just destroyed their own selves.
Yeah.
Romans didn't have to do anything.
And Titus came up and saw all these dead bodies all over. They were throwing the bodies over the wall, but filling up the valleys below because there were bodies everywhere. And
Wasn't there somebody that, because I read all your stuff and I get things confused, but one of the people inside Jerusalem that went and burned all this?
yeah, we'll
not
get to
there yet.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
See,
So-
these were these Kaslarnians?
No, these were Jews.
That's what they are. They're
These
when they were scattered, they went to.
this is prior to the scattering. These are Jews.
I have no idea.
No,
I couldn't tell you.
He scattered them. When did he scatter them?
Well,
This is after the scattering because
Yeah, because this is after Yeshua came. The scattering happened before
oh,
Yeshua came.
criminy, yeah.
so
yeah,
this
okay.
is
Those are these who call
Khazarians.
themselves to be Jews and who are
Who
not
are
Jews.
not Jews.
and-
Okay, you're right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Khazar-
You're right.
Khazarians
Khazarians.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
You're right.
and they
You're
were
right.
by this point they're appointing priests and like the
Oh.
Romans appointed
Mhm.
priests, and there was no.
Yes, so the only Jews left there
and-
were the
And you got to remember, by
Some of
this
Judah was
time,
still
all
there.
the Christians had left.
Right.
All the Christians are
Right.
gone by this time.
Because they had heeded
They had heeded his warning.
those letters, so get out.
Let me say that book, The 13th Tribe, everybody should read it. And everybody would have a much better understanding
What?
Yeah.
the 13th tribe.
by Arthur Kessler.
Okay,
K-O-E-S-S-L,
so
or something like that.
let's see. So did you guys write down, if you wanted to write down the names? I also have. Okay, I have the three factions. Eleazar, the Zealots. He controlled the Zealots.
You have that in those notes that you.
They
Texted me.
were the ones. Yeah, the one I
Okay,
texted.
good.
Text you. These all come from, by the way, Adam Marshaw's notes that I posted
Oh.
online,
Oh, okay.
because this is way too beyond me. So, John of Geshala, he's mentioned a lot in here, and actually they portrayed him. They thought he was a Messiah, and they thought he was going to deliver them, but in fact he became a tyrant and tried to rule everybody. And then Simon.
So,
So now turn to Luke 19, 42 to 44. We're still on the second seal.
We're going to Luke 19.
Luke 19,
44?
44.
Oh, bring that to it almost. It's in the middle of a sentence.
Poor baby.
Start at 43, please.
I haven't got there yet. I'm slow. Okay, one more page.
My Bible is
19.
19.
Oh,
Yeah.
19
And I
what?
started,
44.
we'll start in
Nancy,
41.
Started-
41.
Yeah.
wow.
We'll start in
41.
41
Okay.
to go to 42, 44. It says, and as he approached, beholding the city, he wept over it, saying that if you knew, even you also, indeed, in this your day, the things for your peace, but now it was hidden from your eyes. For days shall come upon you, and your enemies shall be put a siege around. It's hard to read this.
Mine
Your
says-
enemies shall put around.
Your enemies shall put a siege mound around
Yeah.
you, and shall surround you, and shall constrain you from all sides, and shall dash you and your children with you, and they shall not leave among you a stone upon a stone, because you knew not the time of your visitation.
Wow.
And
And that's Jesus saying that.
I mean, this is
Yeah,
in the scriptures, and
yeah.
why didn't we not see this?
because everybody keeps talking about everything being in the future.
Yeah,
We didn't see it the way that you're teaching it and bringing it to
I
our
mean,
eyes.
it's like right here,
Yeah, and he knew.
and yeah, I mean, it's right there. It's pretty explicit how bad it's going to be, and yeah,
And that's when the temple came down.
yeah.
No stone will be up. Yeah, no stone will leave no stone.
So now let's turn to Zechariah 11. We're going to be jumping around a lot. So, Mom, if you're listening to this, sorry.
So now we're going where?
Zechariah.
Zechariah
What page is Zechariah?
11. I don't know. Let's
11
see.
something.
There's Zephaniah.
Zechariah.
Zechariah
Hey,
12:25
Hey, guys.
is that'll get you close.
What chapter?
11.
Okay, got it.
Zechariah 11,
Okay.
10
10,
to 14.
10 to 14.
Yeah. Who wants to read
I'll
that?
read.
Okay.
And I took my staff, Beauty, and cut it in two, that I might break the covenant which I had made with all the people. So it was broken on that day. Thus the poor of the flock who were watching me knew that it was the word of the Lord. Then I said to them, if it is agreeable to you, give me my wages, and if not, refrain. So they weighed out my wages, 30 pieces of silver. You got me going?
Yeah.
And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter. That princely price they set on me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord for the potter. Then I cut in two my other staff, bonds that I might break in the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. Got me going?
Yeah. I don't know
So
exactly.
He had the two staffs?
I don't know exactly why I have that written down here.
I don't know either,
Does he
but
mean
why was,
Zephaniah?
why was
No, it
this
says
rod called
Zechariah.
Beauty?
Zechariah.
Well,
Zechariah. I remember reading it,
What was
highlighted.
the?
But this Judas Iscariot is the one that did the 30 pieces of
But he
silver.
says- but he says, then I cut asunder my other staff.
But I'm not sure why that
That I
has
might
any.
break
What were the
brotherhood
verses again? 'Cause I was
between
lost.
Judah and
12.
Israel.
Okay, Zechariah 11, 10 to 14. And of course, I'm following the guy's notes, and I didn't write down why he said to look at that.
Well, I don't know why either.
Yeah, sorry guys. Now Zechariah 12, since why we're here, 12, 10 to 14, I do know why we need to read that.
Okay.
This gives us proof that the tribes, that the word earth in Revelation, that we always see the whole earth and all that, it's actually talking about the land and the tribes.
Okay.
And we'll see that in Zechariah 12, 11 to, or 10 to 14.
Okay, so now wait. The next one is Zechariah chapter
12,
12,
10 to 14.
10 to 14.
10 to 14.
Yeah, it says, and I will pour out upon the house of David and upon the ones dwelling Jerusalem a spirit of favor and compassion, and they shall look to me on whom they had pierced, because they treated me despitefully, and they shall beat over him with a beating of the breast, as over a beloved one, and they shall grieve with grief as over the firstborn. In that day, beating the breast shall be magnified in Jerusalem, as the beating of the breast over the pomegranate grove in the plain, having been cut down. And the land shall beat the chest according to the tribes by tribes, the tribe of the house of David by itself and their wives and by themselves, and the tribe of the house of Nathan by itself and their wives and by themselves, and the tribe of the house of Levi by itself and the wives by themselves, and the tribes of Simeon by itself and their wives by themselves, and all the tribes, and being left behind, a tribe by itself and their wives by themselves. So the whole point of that was seeing that this whole event, when we read in Revelation, and it's mistranslated as earth, it actually means land.
Yeah.
It means land, and it's about the tribes of the land. So when we read all of that, so we can go. Oh, we got done with that. Phew. That's that one. Okay, question so far. I know I got y'all lost.
Yeah. I'm totally lost.
I don't know why we read Zechariah 11, 10 to 14.
Well, did you know
No,
Zechariah
it's
12,
talking.
10 to 14? I bet you just wrote it twice and for some reason put 11 on the first one.
Oh, maybe I did do that.
I've got
That might be why I did that.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
She's the new assistant.
I've got Genesis
Yeah.
15 referenced here. So let's see what
I don't
got.
know about that.
Yeah. Yeah, because it says they came forth to take peace from the earth. If you take that word earth in Revelation 6:4, turn that to land. They take peace from out of the land,
Out of the land.
that they shall slay one another. They shall slay each other. And was given to him a great sword. So this fiery horse with the one riding on it, that's the spiritual, the symbolism of this. I call it a spirit that come over the land and caused everybody to attack each other and kill each other. Yeah,
Yep.
but not the whole earth. That was the point of
No,
reading Zechariah.
No, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It's the land.
Okay.
Okay, so third seal. Who wants to read that? 5 and 6. Black horse. Revelation
So
6,
that's
5 and
6.
6.
Oh. Okay, 5 and 6 on chapter 6, Revelation.
Yeah.
And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, "Come and see." And I beheld, and lo, a black horse. He that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, "A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see thou hurt not the oil and the..." Let me go.
Nope, that's all.
Oh.
So what does this tell you?
He's okay with us drinking wine. He said to save it.
Well, what's that for? What's the wine and the olive oil for?
Well, I think
The
oil
oil is
for anointing.
blessing. Yeah,
The
anointing.
For temple work.
And
For
the
the temple.
wine, I don't know, is that for temple too?
Mm-hmm. So, but what does this whole thing represent? What does the black horse represent?
I think it represents hunger,
Famine.
famine.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because a measure of, what
Yeah,
does
look
it
at what they're
say?
gonna have to pay for bread. There.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah.
And a measure of barley is just enough to make a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
Revelation 6.
So the great famine is prophesied in Acts 11:27-30.
So where are we going now?
Acts 11:27-30. Whoever gets there first can read it.
And then I'm in Acts, and then what?
27.
11.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, 11:27-30.
Okay, I'll read.
Okay.
And in these days came.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
27. All right.
And in these days, wait a minute, 27, came prophets from Jerusalem unto Antioch. And there stood up one of them named Agabus, and signified by the Spirit that there should be great famine throughout all the world, which came to pass in the days of Claudius Caesar. Whoa! Then the disciples, every man according to his ability, determined to send relief unto the brethren which dwelt in Judea, which also they did, and sent it to the elders by the hands of Barnabas and Saul.
Okay, so we stop there. So this famine started in 45 AD, in the reign of Claudius Caesar. So there was already famine in the land.
There should be one in
That,
the fridge.
so we're talking 20 years of famine. And
20 years?
yeah, 20 years of famine. So they probably had drought, a pretty long season of drought. And
What was that Acts verse?
Acts 11:27-30. So who do we got here? We got baby Jesse. Jesse's joining us. He's the one that he's the
He cries
crybaby.
so different than he cries so different than Judith.
Okay. So,
Okay.
so the famine climaxed during the siege. In December of 1965, John Geshala set fire to all the storehouses in the city.
Oh my
And it
word.
says there was enough grain to last the city for years.
Wow. What's this retard that said everything on
He
fire?
thought he was the.
He thought he was the Messiah. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, he was retarded.
What was his
He
name
was
again?
going to provide for everybody.
John of Geshala.
So he burned
Yeah.
everything up to prove he could provide for them.
Which you could not.
They
Wow.
ate their own children, belts, sandal. They ate their own belts, their own sandals.
Leather. They ate the leather.
Yeah, dried grass and oxen dung. So let's turn to, well, I guess
see
I
chewing on
turn.
my shoe.
So we're going to turn to
I
The-
boiled that baby.
the Jewish wars,
Wow.
Oh.
book 5. So
Okay.
write this down.
Okay.
Book 5,
Whoa.
So we're back in-
Slow. Book 5,
chapter 10,
chapter 10,
paragraph 2.
paragraph 2.
Book 5,
Wow.
chapter 10. Could you imagine eating your own shoe?
Oh,
Now we know why they say it's tough as leather. They hate leather.
Exactly.
oh my goodness.
I
That's
would
where a lot of that
prefer
stuff
that
comes
to a
from.
lot of
Yeah.
other things.
Ah,
Too bad our shoes aren't made of real
Okay.
leather anymore.
who likes to read?
Now we need polyester.
Who likes
So
to
where are we
read?
reading? What are we reading?
Oh, we're reading out of Josephus.
Oh,
We got a long one here to read.
I don't care. I'll read, but I
know. Can you
I
read
don't-
this? It's small.
I might not be able to.
Yeah.
Just about.
just go ahead and read it. You
Well,
can read
I'll
it.
try.
Okay.
Starting from where?
It's long.
The
Sure you want
highlighted
to read
portion?
it? All that highlighted portion.
I'll try, but if I give
You
out.
see it?
If you give out, give it back. But read nice and loud.
But as for the richer sort,
Louder. Sorry.
it proved all one to them whether they stayed in the city or attempted to get out of it. For they were equally destroyed in both cases. For every such person was put to death under this pretense that they were going to desert, but in reality that the robbers might get what they had. The madness of rebellious did also increase together with their famine, and both these miseries were every day inflamed more and more. For there was no grain which anywhere appeared publicly, but the robbers came running into and searched men's private houses, and then, if they found any, they tormented them because they had denied they had any. And if they found none, they tormented them worse because they supposed they had more carefully concealed it.
Wow.
The indignation they made use, I'm not sure I said that word right. The indication they made use of whether they had any or not was taken from the bodies of these miserable wretches, which if they were in good shape, they supposed they were in no want at all of food. But if they were wasted away, they walked off without searching any further, nor did they think it proper to kill such as these, because they saw they would very soon die of themselves for want of food. Many there were indeed who sold what they had for one measure of wheat, if they were of the richer sort, but of barley, if they were poorer. When these had so done, they shut themselves up in the inmost rooms of their homes and ate the grain they had gotten. Some did it without grinding it, by reason of the extremity of the want they were in, and others baked bread of it according as necessity and fear dictated to them. A table was nowhere laid for a distinct meal, but they snatched the bread out of the fire half-baked and ate it hastily. It was now a miserable case and a sight that would justly bring tears into our eyes. How men stood as to their food, while the more powerful had more than enough, and the weaker were
lamenting.
Yeah, lamenting for want of it. But the famine was too hard for all other passions, and it is destructive to nothing so much as to modesty, for what was otherwise worthy of reference was in this case despised, insomuch that children pulled the very morsels that their fathers were eating out of their very mouths, and what was still more to be pitied, so did the mothers do as to their infants. And when those that were most dear were perishing under their hands, they were not ashamed to take from them the very last drop that might preserve their lives. And while they ate after this manner, yet were they not concealed in doing so. But the rebellious everywhere came upon them immediately and snatched away from them what they had gotten from others. For when they saw any house shut up, this was to them a signal that the people within had gotten some food, whereupon they broke upon the doors and ran in and took pieces of what they were eating almost out of their very throats, and this by force. The old men who held their food fast were beaten, and if the women hid what they had within their hands, their hair was torn for so doing. Nor was there any pity shown either to the aged or to the infants, but they lifted up children from the ground as they hung upon the morsels they had gotten, and shook them down upon the floor. But still there were more barbarously cruel to those that had prevented their coming in, and had actually swallowed down what they were going to seize upon, as if they had been unjustly defrauded of their right. They also invented terrible methods of torments to discover where any food was, and they were these to stop up the passages of the privy parts of the miserable wretches, and to drive sharp stakes into their fundaments, and a man was forced to bear what is terrible even to hear, in order to make him confess that he had one loaf of bread, or that he might discover a handful of barley meal that was concealed. And this was done when these torments were not themselves hungry, for the thing had been less barbarous had necessity forced them to it. But this was done to keep their madness in exercise, and as making preparation of provisions for themselves for the following days.
Nah, isn't that crazy?
Oh, goodness sakes.
So did you guys understand what that meant? Put in the privy parts?
Yeah, I think so. I don't want to.
Yeah.
Explain.
Explain.
The private part?
Their private parts. They stuck things in men.
Right.
Yeah.
To get him to confess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They drove sharp stakes up their fundaments.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just ugh.
Gross.
Yeah. Let's see. Wars 5:13.
Man.
6 talks about the oil in the wine. And so 5:13. Chapter 13,
Okay.
paragraph 6.
Okay.
It says, "But as for John, when he could do no longer plunder the people, he turned to sacrilege and melted down many of the sacred utensils which had been given to the temple, as also many of those vessels which were necessary for such as ministered about holy things, the cauldrons, the dishes, and the tables. Nay, he did not abstain from those pouring vessels that were sent them by Augustus and his wife, Augustus and his wife, from the Roman emperors, did ever both honor and adorn this temple. Whereas this man, who was a Jew, seized upon what were the donations of foreigners, and said to those that were with him that it was proper for them to use divine things while they were fighting for the divinity. Okay, so it was proper to use the divine things because they're fighting for God. Without fear, and that such whose warfare is for the temple should live of the temple. On which account he emptied the vessels of that sacred wine and oil, which the priest kept to be poured on the burnt offerings, and which lay in the inner court of the temple, and distributed it among the multitude, who in their anointing themselves and drinking used each of them above and in of them. So there we got the anointing oil and wine. So apparently it was a combination they poured over top the sacrifices. So when he got tired of going after people, he went in and
Took stuff.
yeah. So this gives you an idea of the massiveness of the famine.
And this went on for 7 years.
20 years.
Well, see, they were already famines, but see, they were locked in by December 69.
Right.
So they had 4 months of extreme. And so
they were locked in December 69.
yeah, and I watched several videos this week too and stuff, and they had said that there was people that would sneak out of outside the city walls and look for like grass and anything, and then the marauders or the zealots, they would come and they would attack them and grab what they had, and then other ones, they would sneak out of the city and give themselves up to the Romans,
And then they got killed.
and the Romans would they didn't know who swallowed what jewels. And so they would pick one and slice their guts open and see what was in there. So either you did if you did, or if you did if you didn't. You didn't know. And there was the more people survived if they went on the side of the Romans. If they snuck out of the city, if they could get out.
Yeah.
Because then they were sold into slavery.
Volunteering slaves, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want that boy.
Boy, oh boy.
I want that boy. I just.
It's a baby.
Oh, she just looks right at you.
That's Jesse flying through the air behind me.
Oh, sweet. Oh, sweet.
He's one of the twins.
Oh.
There's Judith. Judith is here too.
She's quiet for
She's
some
quiet
reason.
for right now, and that's odd for her.
Oh.
Okay. So let's move on to the fourth seal. If you guys get overwhelmed or tired, let me know.
So we're going on to
Revelation.
Revelations.
Yep.
Revelation. 6, 7, and 8. Yeah.
Are you going to turn or no?
Turn what?
To Revelation 6. Oh, no, I didn't know. 6, 7, and 8, right?
Well, mine starts with
7 to
7.
8.
The
Seven.
fifth seal.
Yeah.
Oh,
The fourth seal.
Hey.
What?
The fourth
Fourth seal.
Where's his
Mine
bottle?
starts with
Doesn't have his
verse
bottle.
7.
So who wants to
Want
read?
more food?
Oh, the
I
fourth
thought you had
seal.
like an ounce left. I don't know.
Oh, right. We read about that. Well, okay.
Okay, who wants to read?
I guess I can read a little bit.
We're on
Okay.
the fifth seal.
Yeah, fourth
Third.
seal.
Verse 7.
Verse 7.
Oh, the pale horse.
The pale horse.
Of course, the futurists believe that this is Islam. The
Oh,
pale horse
really?
is actually
Okay.
green, which is the color of their light green, which is that pop bottle
Yeah.
green.
Yeah, yeah.
That's their color of their flag.
Oh, okay.
Like.
Anyway, and when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with beasts of the earth. And when he had hope.
Okay, so if we go
So
back,
Earth is land, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So and was given to him
Kevin, is he
authority
looking at you?
upon the fourth of the
Oh, no,
land to kill
He
by
was.
broadsword and by hunger and by plague and by the wild beasts of the land. Now we've already seen a lot of this. We've already seen the killing. We've already seen the hunger, and then plagues are to come. And so this gives. So if we turn to Matthew 23, 35 to 39. Lots of
Okay, I'm sorry. What?
reading. Matthew
23.
23.
And what verse?
39,
23, 35
35.
to 39. Oh, wait. That's the wrong seal. Sorry, guys. That's for fifth seal. You wrote it in pen. Sorry. That's for the fifth seal.
The fifth seal, the martyr.
I was going to say, man, that doesn't sound right. Okay. A quarter of the population was wiped out by sword, famine, pestilence, wild beasts. Ezekiel 14:21 represents this, which happened in 586 BC in the siege of Babylon.
Okay, Ezekiel what?
In the destruction.
14:21.
Ezekiel 14:21.
I don't know why I cannot
So let's go
remember
back there.
anything for long.
It's okay.
I'm with you.
I
You
know
don't have
why.
to.
You've got 2 babies and 2 girls.
Yeah, and I think I'm getting a silent migraine a little bit.
Oh.
That's why my eyes were blurring earlier.
Oh. So Ezekiel 14:21.
Oh.
Never got those until I had children.
Yeah.
Must be hormonal.
Let's talk
You'll
about the things
discover a
that you
lot
never
of stuff
have until
that
you had
changes.
children.
14.
Let's talk about how it changes when they all move out.
Yeah.
So it says, thus says Adonai Yahuwah, but if also my 4 punishments, the ferocious
You're just spitting it out.
broadsword and famine and the ferocious wild beast and plague, I should send out upon Jerusalem to utterly destroy from out of it man and beast. Yet behold, these things being left behind in her, the ones escaping from out of her, who shall lead them out from out of her sons and daughters, behold, they shall go forth to you, and you shall see their ways and their thoughts. And you shall be repentant over the hurts which I brought upon Jerusalem, for all which I brought upon her, that they shall comfort you, for you shall see their ways and their thoughts, and you shall realize that I have not done all this in vain, as much as I did by her, says Adonai Yahuwah. Okay, so we see in this right here that if we go back to verse 21, the broadsword, the famine, the wild beast, and the plague. So he's actually referring back to Ezekiel.
Well, that was one thing that broadsword, okay. Vespasian had the Maccabi that we talked about last week. It was a smaller sword, but it was more lethal in some ways. Anyway, side note.
Yeah. So that's why we looked up Ezekiel. And I'm all over the place. Okay, wars. Write this down. Chapter 5.
Okay. We're going back to Joseph.
No, not chapter 5. Book 5.
Yeah.
Josephus.
Yeah.
Chapter
Chapter 12
12.
and paragraphs 3 and 4.
You're done. We're all done. I'll have to get a book of Josephus.
I'm going to
There's so
too.
much I have to get.
It's online. You can read these
Yeah.
for free.
Oh,
I got mine at Hastings before they shut down, I think, for like $6 or something.
Wow.
I think I paid $12 for this on eBay. Well, not eBay, Amazon. And it was
Oh, maybe I was
used.
gonna
You're
get another
good.
one
You're
then.
good. I know you're
Yeah.
not starving.
Okay.
I know for a fact.
So does anyone else want to read? You want to read?
Sorry.
The highlighted, starting at the bottom down
That
there.
thing.
Okay, just read loud.
Oh,
Okay, everybody.
oh, Josephus.
So this is Wars
This is good
5,
for us,
12,
Karen.
and 3 to 4.
So all the hope of escaping was now cut off from the Jews, together with their liberty of going out of the city. Then did the famine widen its progress and devour the people by whole houses and families. The upper rooms were full of women and children that were dying by famine, and the lanes of the city were full of dead bodies of the aged. The children also and the young men wandered about the marketplaces like shadows. All swelled with famine and fell down dead, wheresoever their misery seized them. As for burying them, those that were sick themselves were not able to do it, and those that were hearty and well were deterred from doing it by the great multitude of those dead bodies, and by the uncertainty there was how soon they should die themselves. For many died as they were burying others, and many went to their coffins before that fatal hour was come. Nor was there any lamentations made under calamities, nor were heard any mournful complaints, but the famine confounded all natural passions. For those who were just going to die looked upon those that were going to rest before them with dry eyes and open mouths. A deep silence also, and a kind of deadly night had seized upon the city, while yet the robbers were still more terrible than the miseries were themselves. For they broke open those houses where were no other than graves of dead bodies, and plundered them of what they had. And carrying off the coverings of their bodies, went out laughing, and tried the points of their swords in their dead bodies. And in order to prove what metal they were made of, they thrust some of those through all that still lay alive upon the ground. But for those that entreated them to lend them their right hand and their sword to dispatch them, they were too proud to grant their request, and left them to be consumed by the famine. Now every one of these died with their eyes fixed upon the temple, and left the rebellious alive behind them. Now the rebellious at first gave orders that the dead should be buried out of the public treasury, as not enduring the stench of their dead bodies. But afterwards, when they could not do that, they had them cast down from the walls into the valleys beneath. However, when Titus, in going his rounds along those valleys, saw them full of dead bodies and thick petrification running about them, or putrefaction running about them, he gave a groan, and spreading out his hands to heaven, called God to witness that this was not his doing. And such was the sad case of the city itself. But the Romans were very joyful, since none of the rebellious could now make sallies out of the city, because they were themselves disconsolate, and the famine already touched them also. These Romans, besides, had plenty of grain and other necessities out of Syria and out of neighboring provinces, many of whom would stand near the wall of the city and show the people what great quantities of provisions they had, and so make the enemy more sensible to the famine, by the great plenty, even to satiety, which they had themselves. However, when the rebellious still showed no inclinations of yielding, Titus, out of his compassion of the people that remained, and out of his earnest desire of rescuing what was still left out of these miseries, began to raise his banks again, although materials for them were hard to become at. For all the trees that were about the city had already been cut down for the making of the former banks. Yet did the soldiers bring with them other materials from the distance of 90 furlongs, and thereby raised banks in 4 parts, which made greater than the former, though this was done only at the tower of Antonia. So Caesar went his rounds through the legions and hurried on the works, and showed the robbers that they were now in his hands. But these men, and these only, were incapable of repenting of the wickedness that they had been guilty of, and separated their souls from their body, and they used them both as if they belonged to other folks and not to themselves. For no gentle affection could touch their souls, nor could any pain affect their bodies, since they could still tear the dead bodies of the people as dogs do, and fill the prisons with those that were sick.
Wow.
And that was already within. So that was the fellow Jews within Jerusalem did all of this. So all these seals so far, except for seal number 1, were all going on within the city before the Romans even got there.
Yeah, Jews doing it to Jews.
Yeah. They were destroying themselves. A spirit fell over them,
Had they
and
obeyed
this
the
was a
Lord,
judgment.
had they
But yet the
obeyed-
Romans get blamed for it all, don't they?
Yeah,
That's why.
yeah,
They don't want this out there.
yeah. 1.1 million Jews died.
Wow, in that city?
Yeah,
Wow.
inside the Jerusalem.
That's, wow.
Yeah, it's just crazy. And after reading all this, I'm like, oh my goodness. We don't even have to imagine how bad it could get.
Oh,
We can read how bad it got. And this was the single worst event that happened in the history of Judaism, in the history of Israel.
Or where else?
Yeah. So, wow.
China and Russia's done some.
Well, I mean,
Probably
Yeah, but is it
bigger
any
stuff.
worse than this? Probably
Some bigger
not.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
worse.
that's how they got rid of. That's how they destroyed the Ukraine, was they starved them to death. And I think there was like 60 million people there.
Yeah.
Stalin,
So
eh?
yeah.
Stalin murdered. Yeah.
So
They
for
starved them to death.
yeah, just craziness. Yeah. So now we're gonna move on to this 5th seal, and this has to do with the martyrs.
Wow.
So this is
This now we go to
Verse
Matthew, but
So,
so I'll read the 5th seal.
Oh, good.
Or Carol, do you want to read the 5th seal?
I'm still back in Josephus.
I gotta get your mouth off the floor.
It's so amazing to me. Wow. I'm still shocked. I'm sorry.
Isn't it? It's just like, oh my goodness, this
I
happened.
know. I think John got it. Here, he can do it.
Okay, so verse 9 to 11.
All right. And when he opened the 5th seal, I saw under the slaughter place the beings of those who had been slain for the word of Elohim and for the witness which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Master, set apart and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? And there was given to each one a white robe, and they were told that they should rest a little while longer until both the number of their fellow servants and their brothers who would be killed as they were was completed.
Okay, so do you guys remember the whole reason why this judgment came on Jerusalem in the first place?
Jesus' death.
No. Let's go back to Matthew 23. What?
Jesus said that the temple was going to fall down and all that.
And why?
Remember that.
Okay, so that's what we're going to get
Because
to.
they killed it.
So Matthew 23. verse 35 to 39.
Why did it happen?
Yeah,
To
why?
destroy the
No,
covenant, to destroy it.
but why?
35
Why did
to
the
what?
judgment? What did? Yeah, 35. Matthew 23.
Yeah.
Let me see where I have too many notes here. 23, 35 to 39.
35.
Okay.
Or we can even read 29 to 39.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Matthew 23. Okay.
Matthew 23.
Okay, 23 verse
29.
okay.
It's important to keep this in our scope because how can a loving God ordain such horrible atrocities?
Read. Kevin
Who's
hasn't
gonna
read.
read?
No, I don't want to read.
Kevin.
His neck
Okay.
hurts.
Oh yeah.
If you read a little bit, I'll pick up where you leave
Excuses. Okay. So
I'm holding the baby.
It's okay.
So
Matthew 23.
20
23, 29
Okay.
to 38.
Okay. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you build the tombs of the prophets and adorn the monuments of the righteous, and say, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Therefore, you are witnesses against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your father's guilt. Serpents, brood of vipers, how did you escape the condemnation of hell? Therefore, indeed, I send you prophets, wise men, and scribes. Some of them you will kill and crucify. Some of them you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute city to city, that on you may come all the righteous blood shed on the earth, from the blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechias, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Assuredly, I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation.
Okay. So we see from the blood, the righteous blood of Abel to Zechariah.
Right.
And if you know the Tanakh, the Hebrew scriptures, it ends in Zechariah. So all of the history from Genesis to Zechariah, all the righteous blood is they are under judgment for all of them being killed.
Wow.
Not,
No, because they killed the prophets.
they killed all the prophets. And it's that blood that cries out.
Wow.
And if we go back to Revelation, now keep your finger where you're at, because I think we're going to go back. Anyway, if we go back
Because
to
the ancestors, forefathers, killed the prophets.
Yes, and then
They're gonna be judged for
and then he sent more prophets. Keep listening, and they rejected Yahusha, who is their redeemer, who wipes away their sin, and they rejected him too. So,
And remember, this happened after those letters were sent warning them to get out, right?
Yes.
So the true believers,
they left.
They were not in.
Yeah, the
Jerusalem.
remnant was gone. They had fled.
So God is punishing the now people for their ancestors.
Yes, because they rejected the Messiah.
Yeah.
And it's his blood that washes away their sin. And all, so this is all their wickedness. I'm just reading what it says.
Or if you just wanted to
You can take it up with Yahusha, because he's the one that said it.
Yeah.
But if we go back to Revelation.
But I just wanted to point out, though, that it wasn't like he all of a sudden just came and allowed this to happen.
They had a lot of warning.
There was a letter that
Yes.
came that said you need to get out of Jerusalem because this is
And-
going to happen.
Prophets came
And
and
all
said,
the prophets,
killed them.
Zechariah, And I mean,
Okay.
over and over, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and all these prophets, they came and they told them to repent, and they would maybe repent for a little while, and then it would go back. And then they would kill, I mean, what they did to Isaiah and Jeremiah, and they killed all of them violently. So they rejected all the prophets. And this is as a people, as a nation.
Okay.
And okay, and
What
so
does
if we
it
go
say-
back,
what does it say about
if we go
going
back,
to the 10th generation?
so
Is that
The sins of
something
Sodom.
he attributes to not only the fathers, but carries on to the 10th generation?
the sins of the sins of the ancestors, they get passed down.
Okay.
Yeah,
There you
and
go.
They're like
so
That answers my question.
yeah, yeah, okay. And then if we read in this seal, that the blood, it says, do you not judge and avenge our blood from the ones dwelling upon the land? So, and it says that they cried out from under the altar. And if you think about the sacrifices in the blood would run down and gather under the altar. And it was the blood that cried out, not that their soul, the blood cried, it says the life is in the blood.
Yeah.
So according to scripture, life is in the blood. And from Abel all the way up, that was crying out.
So is Zechariah the last book of the Old Testament and like the LXX? And stuff?
No, in the Jewish Bible.
Okay.
It's rearranged differently. It's just rearranged.
Yes, no, I understood that, but that's why I was like, is that why we don't put it together here?
Yeah, I have.
Right, because in the Old Testament, ours is Malachi.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So okay.
Yeah. So anybody that has a Hebrew Tanakh or has like the complete Jewish Bible, or they see it's rearranged. The scriptures is that way too.
The scriptures is?
Mm-hmm. Ends in Zechariah for the Tanakh, I believe. You can check. She's got the scriptures with her, so but I know it's rearranged.
I think it ends in Chronicles.
That version.
It ends in Chronicles.
Does it?
We were looking at like the Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Like that. It was like purple.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I read. So
Where's Zechariah in this book?
I don't know.
See, I can't read these pages right here. See.
But anyway, so now we see that the blood that's crying out, those that are crying out are the prophets. And then it says that they were given each a white robe.
It's way back here.
So does that mean that they already had their redeemed bodies at that point?
I don't think so.
What? How can you wear a white robe without a redeemed body, without a body? But and so they're crying out, how long? And then it was said to them that they should rest yet a time until of which they should be fulfilled, both the fellow servants and the brothers about to be killed. So then there's still more martyrs. So here we read all this stuff. There's still more. And by that point, there was the apostle Paul that needed to be killed. There through this history. And we got to realize that the Hebrew thought is not chronological the way we think. They kind of mish it all together. It's more topical, not like chronological in time. So all of this isn't exactly chronological in time. So we have the Apostle Paul. He was killed by Nero. Peter was killed by Nero. James the Just was killed. So those were all considered prophets in that day. John, they tried to kill him. They boiled him in oil, and he still stayed alive. But we see in Revelation 18, this gets fulfilled when they get to see the vengeance of their blood. And we can specifically turn to 18:20 in Revelation.
20.
Be glad over her, O heaven, and the holy ones, and the apostles and the prophets, for God judged your case from out of her. And so we'll go back up to 18:18. That's what I have highlighted, but that's right in the middle of a sentence. Let's go to 17. So we'll go back to verse 17. For in 1 hour was made desolate so great a wealth, and in every navigator, and all upon the boats sailing, and seamen, and as many as the sea as many as worked the sea from afar off they stood, and they cried out, saying, the smoke of her burning fire, saying, what is likened to it? The great city. And they threw dust upon their heads and cried out, weeping and mourning, and saying, woe, 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 the great city, in which were enriched all the ones having the ships and the sea from out of her valuables. For in 1 hour she was made desolate. Be glad over her, O heaven, and holy ones, and apostles and prophets, for Yahuwah judged your case from out of her. And one strong angel lifted a stone as a millstone, great millstone, and cast it in the sea, saying, thus with impulse shall the great city of Babylon be thrown, and in no way shall be found any more. And the sound of harpists and musicians and pipers and trumpsters in no way shall be heard in you any more. And every craftsman and every craft in no way shall be found in you any more. The sound of a millstone and in no way shall be heard in you any more. So that was Jerusalem. That's not America, folks.
I agree.
Wow.
I agree. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Well, this is what the church folk teach that's coming.
Yeah, I read that over and over.
I know, but
this is America. No, it's not. It's Jerusalem.
I know.
Because they're the ones that killed the prophets. They're the ones. So then he tells the prophets, rejoice. Now it's being done.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah.
This white robes, these are the dead, of course. These are the glorified.
Because they're martyrs.
The dead prophets.
Yeah. So and then also it says Revelation 16, 5 and 6. So we see this kind of throughout Revelation, that the blood of the martyrs, the blood of these prophets, it has to do with this. This is all about judging and redeeming. So
16:5.
Yeah, 16.
And I heard the angel of the waters say, thou art righteous, O Lord, which art and was and shall be, because thou hast judged thus. For they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy. Is that it?
Is it 5 and 6?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there, we've seen it again.
Wow.
Yeah, and in verse 7, I'll just read that. And I heard from out of the altar saying, yes, O Yahuwah, Elohim, the Almighty, true and just are your judgments.
Amen.
So, and that's the third bowl. It says the rivers become blood. And actually in Josephus it talks about the water everywhere is contaminated with blood.
Well, you have that many bodies and you're not burying them or something. Or
Yeah, they couldn't even bury them. They were dying while they were burying them. Blood everywhere. Blood. Yeah.
I'm not holding hands.
Yeah.
I'll hold her for a bit.
And then I've got Luke 18, 1-8. I don't know, is this hitting home to you guys?
Hey,
Yes.
pass down the line.
Yes, I'm not sure where we're at. Though. I got distracted.
What do you think?
I'm just gonna have to
Are you gonna read their notes? And if you read Adam Marshaw's notes that I put in the group, this all comes from him.
Oh, great. Oh.
And you know, except for the reading, I
Luke chapter what then?
Luke 18, 1-8.
What scroll are we on? We're
We're still on the 5th seal with the martyrs.
Okay. So I haven't this.
No. All these grandmas over here are playing with the baby.
Not everybody smiles at it.
We don't smile at you anymore. We growl at you.
Why we like the babies
Yeah,
better.
grouchy old women. We gotta growl at you. Oh,
Nancy, say excuse me.
okay. So Luke 18, 1-8, and specifically 7 and 8. But who wants to read that? This is a parable. Anyone want to read it?
You said Luke 18, 1-8?
Yeah.
Sure, I'll read it again. Or read again. Then he spoke at a parable to them, that men always ought to pray and not lose heart, saying, there was in a certain city a judge who did not fear God nor regard man. Now there was a widow in that city, and she came to him, saying, get justice for me from my adversary. And he would not for a while. But afterward he said within himself, though I do not fear God nor regard man, yet because this widow troubles me, I will avenge her, lest by her continual coming she worry me. Then the Lord said, hear what the unjust judge said. And shall not God avenge his own elect who cry out day and night to him, though he bears long with them? I tell you that he will avenge them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he really find faith on the earth?
Okay, so we see there, and God shall be in no way execute vengeance for his chosen, the ones yelling to him day and night, and is lenient unto them. I say to you that he shall execute his vengeance quickly. Furthermore, the Son of Man, having come then, shall he find belief in the land? Yeah, upon the land. Yeah. So we see right there they're crying out for vengeance, and he says he's coming quickly. Yeah, that's a lot of stuff.
Yes, it is. Wow. That's why you have to study your whole life before you even start to get.
Yeah,
You might
and then
start
you're
to get
studying the wrong stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
Then you got to start
all over again. Okay.
It's amazing how this book. I mean, and when you were studying in church, it was right on.
Yeah.
It's right on.
It seemed right on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we put the glasses on. We have the glasses, whatever glasses fit us for the time, and we read everything through those glasses.
Yeah.
And that's divine.
But
That's divine because
if there would have been the internet, an explanation, and taking things by the age, like that's in that book, Raptureless, and what she's talking about, and shows you when Nero was in rule, and when he died, and when the temple went down, then this stuff all makes sense. But if you don't have that knowledge,
you've got to have the history of it.
if you don't understand that history, of course you're going to put it in the future. Because you can't see
That's
any
the
of
only
that.
explanation for it.
Right.
Well,
You know,
Right.
and then when
Yeah.
we read the Bible, we have a tendency to read it as if it was written to us.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And then that gets us locked into that
The futuristic.
intertestamental period, the intercovenantal period, where we're locked between the old and the new. And, you know, and so we're actually reliving the first century, not realizing it until, you know,
Well, all these things were written as examples
yeah.
for us.
So,
To us.
yeah. So, I don't know if you guys want to tackle the sixth seal today, or if you want
How do you
to.
feel?
What time is it?
It's 2, after 2. How you
The
guys
sixth
doing,
seal,
John
that's
and
the last
Carol?
seal.
Doing fine.
You doing
I'm
fine?
still back in Josephus.
Kevin needs
How's
a nap.
Kevin? Kevin, are you doing good? Fine.
I
He's
said
fine.
to finish it.
Okay. What'd you say, Carol?
I said I'm still back in Josephus. I am just amazed.
Do you have a copy of Josephus there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're distracted. You're reading.
Well, no, I'm just amazed. I mean, it's all coming together.
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, if you pointed out where to read in Josephus, there's so much there. If you just if you get it pointed out, then you're good to go. Okay, this is the sixth seal. We're gonna break it up. We'll do 12 to 14 first.
Okay.
Who wants to read?
Oh, I will. I looked when he opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as a sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell on earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. And the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave, every free man, hid themselves in caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand?
Okay, so actually he is referring, and there's a whole bunch of Old Testament scriptures that shows this imagery, and you guys can write this down. We won't read them.
Okay.
Okay. So if you guys want to read them later, you can. So I'll wait till you get everyone your notes out. So this is the imagery.
Six seal kind of.
Yeah, that was the sixth
From
seal.
12 to 14. Yeah, the imagery of the sky and the moon and all that stuff. Okay. Isaiah 13, 10 to 13.
Okay, Isaiah 10.
Isaiah 13.
13.
10
10
through 13.
to 13.
10 through 13. Okay.
Yeah, and that is the defeat of Babylon. And it already occurred. When you read this, you go, well, that's about the end of the world. Okay, and then
Babylon.
Isaiah 24, 1 to 6. And then 19 to 23.
We're still in Isaiah.
Yeah.
Then 19
through 23.
Yeah. And
okay. Are we in chapter 24?
Yes.
Yes.
19
through
to 23. And then Isaiah 34, 4. And all of that is the defeat of Edom. And then, okay, you're still ready. Okay, ready?
Yeah.
And then Ezekiel 32, 6 to 8, the defeat of Egypt.
Ezekiel 32.
Yeah, 6 to 8. And then we get Joel 2, 10 and 30 to 31.
Oh.
So 2,
Chapter 2, verse 10.
10, and 30 to 31. And that's the defeat of Israel and Jerusalem.
Okay.
And Joel 3, 15 to 16. Habakkuk 3, 6 to 11.
And what's that? Habakkuk?
Habakkuk
Habakkuk what?
3,
3.
6 to 11. Okay. So what all this shows is that this is a prophetic hyperbole for for national catastrophe and God's judgment of earthly unbelief and idolatry, described in terms of heavenly disasters. Okay, and then we're going to just do one example. Isaiah 34:4. Let's turn there.
On where the Isaiah?
Isaiah 34:4. Because it's almost like direct quote. Yeah.
That example of national catastrophe as heavenly realm? Or
As heavenly disasters.
Judgment on the nation.
Yeah.
Everything happens in the heavens before it happens on earth.
Yeah, it's a symbolism. It's poetic language.
Okay, 34, what chapter, verse?
4.
4, okay.
It says, and all the powers of the heavens shall melt away, and the heavens shall coil up as a scroll, and all the stars shall fall as leaves fall from out of the grapevine, and leaves from the fig tree. That sounds quite familiar to what you just read. So we go back to reading in 6:12. Let's see. 6:13 and 14. And the stars of the heavens fell unto the earth as a fig tree cast its immature figs, being shaken by a great wind, and the heavens had been separated as a scroll being rolled, and every mountain and island from out of its place were shaken. So there we go. We see that he was again going back to these Old Testament prophets and using their terminology. Yeah, and I think verse 15 is a explanation of what that is. And the kings of the land, and the great men, and the commanders of thousands of the rich, and the mighty ones, and every bondsman and every free man hid themselves in the caves, in the rocks of the mountains. And they say to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us. So in the Tanakh, often they used like stars and the moon and the sun as imagery for kings and princes and lords, and so for the kings to go and hide and come down underneath, and the shaking of the whole whoever's in charge. So we're going to read from Josephus, Wars 6, Book 6, Chapter 7, Paragraph 3. So that's 6, Chapter 7, Paragraph 3.
And this is for verses 12 to 14, or
this is actually we're talking about them going under the ground.
Okay.
And going into the caves. So 6. What did I say?
6, chapter 7, paragraph
6,
3.
7. Okay. Okay. Says, so now the last hope which supported the tyrants and that crew of robbers who were with them was in the caves and caverns underground, where if they could once fly, they did not expect to be searched for, but tried that after the whole city should be destroyed and the Romans gone away, they might come out again and escape from them. This was no better than a dream of theirs, for they were not able to lie hid either from God or from the Romans. However, they depended on these underground subterfuges and set more places on fire than did the Romans themselves. And those that fled out of their houses thus set on fire into the ditches, and they killed without mercy and pillaged them also. And if they discovered food belonging to anyone, they seized it upon it and swallowed it down, together with their blood also. Nay, they were now come to fight one with another about their plunder, and I cannot think that had not their destruction prevented it, their barbarity would have made them taste of even the dead bodies themselves. But we see that they were hiding in caverns and caves, and he even hiding from God.
I think it's interesting that now in our news over the past several months, years really, they've been discovering underground passages and people where people live homes, and you know, I think that's incredible.
Yeah. So,
and it's all over the world.
let's see what else I got here.
Yeah.
I got so this happened in August 70 AD, and I have Matthew 24:7.
Where'd you say, Matthew 24?
7.
Yeah, write those down. We don't have to look them up.
Okay.
Matthew 24:7, Mark 13:8, and Luke 21:11.
Oh, yeah. Mark 13:8 and Luke
21:11.
11. Yeah, and then we'll turn to Luke 23 and read 27 to 30.
Wait, Luke 23, what?
Luke 23,
And then 7 to
27 through 30.
27 to 30.
Is that where we're going now?
Yeah.
And if you were to show, we're in John?
Luke
20 what?
23, 27
23, 27.
to 30. 27.
Yeah. 7.
Do you want to read?
I'll give it a whirl.
Okay.
Someone, and were following him a great multitude of the people and women, which also were beating their chest and wailing over him. And having turned to them, Jesus said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me. Furthermore, weep for yourselves and for your children, for behold, days come in which they shall say, blessed are the sterile, and bellies which bore not, and breasts which nursed not. Then they shall begin to say to the mountains, fall upon us, and to the hills, cover us, for it is in the, okay, just a minute. For it is in the wet wood, these things they do. Just a minute. See, I got lost for a second.
Okay.
Well, mine says
3, 2, okay.
Greenwood, and you said Wetwood?
Wetwood.
Yeah.
In the
That's
Wetwood,
what Greenwood is.
these
Oh.
things they do.
What will be done in dry?
What should
Oh,
happen?
what should happen in the dry?
So in essence, dry wood is like kindle. It bursts into flames, and it's saying that in the green, even green wood bursts into flames. But and
See,
he
that's
said
hard.
the
That's hard
mountains-
to read in the Septuagint because it.
Yeah,
So it was like I was reading Greek.
I know.
Because
That's what
it made no
If
sense
you had
to
a Greek
me.
mind, that would make perfect sense.
Well, well,
I don't.
I don't
you don't have a
either.
Greek mind. Okay, so the mountains shall fall upon you,
What should happen
you
in the dry?
and the hills cover you up. They're crying out.
Or it's in the
Fall
Wetwood,
upon
these
us, fall
things
upon
they
us.
do.
So we saw in Josephus that
Should
they
happen
were
in the dry.
they were trying to hide from even God at that point. And I read other places where they were begging God to kill them because they were starving to death.
I
And
wonder why they didn't just say, God, I'm sorry.
It wasn't in them to do it.
they refused to repent.
They were temple. They were temple people. It
They
wasn't in them
worshipped
to
the
do
temple.
Right.
Oh, they
And-
didn't worship God, they worshiped the
They-
The ones who
Yeah,
worship God
see-
left.
Just like Catholicism.
Yeah.
They worship.
See, they thought God was the temple or in the temple, and
Okay.
he's the only place he could be. That's why they died with their eyes open,
Looking
facing at the temple.
Right.
It was all about the temple.
That's why he had to destroy it. Was to destroy that religious
I see.
system. Yeah. The ones who were truly looking after, looking to follow God, when he told them to leave, they left.
Yeah.
But it's these temple worshipers that.
Hey, none of that.
And so,
No,
thinking of today's Israel people, the Jewish people that are not following Yahusha,
Yeah.
Mhm.
so
They're waiting for a new
they're-
temple.
They're waiting for a new temple, and so their eyes are still on the temple. and
Yes.
It's not on.
The place where the temple was, they still have
Yeah,
the
and
west
that's why
wall.
and that's why they do all they're rocking to the wall, and they're putting their little prayers in the wall, and and all of that because
false
and they
religion.
can't have a temple anywhere else by all means.
It's gotta
They
be
have to
right
have in
there.
that spot because that's where Yahuwah is.
Oh my God! They don't realize.
They have no
they
clue.
don't. They don't have no clue.
And the
And-
reason they don't have a clue, wait a minute, the reason they don't have a clue is because he has not shown that light on them yet.
Well, and the veil, because they rejected Messiah, and the veil is over them, and this is what we see in the Hebrew Roots movement too. Those that are going back and going Torah, and embracing Judaism, the veil comes over them, and suddenly they don't see anymore.
Right.
And
Right.
then now they're all temple. We got to get this temple.
They're not
And
covered by the
Ezekiel's
robe
temple.
of righteousness.
Yeah.
They're covered by the veil.
I just seen a guy last night on Facebook that was Ezekiel's temple and Yahusha's going to build the temple and all about the temple. Everything is about the temple. And I was like, oh my goodness.
You've got to come back to that verse that says
Sorry, go ahead.
where he said he'll never dwell in a temple built with human hands.
Exactly. I said that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what about people getting rid of the whole New Testament?
Yeah, they're just
I could
totally
not believe that
denying the New
guy.
Testament. It's
They should've,
happening
but
all
they
over.
were- They've had a very clear opportunity to
Yeah.
see, but they
The
definitely
girls.
denied
Or-
it.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
refuse. So, and what I see happening is the Christian, the church, who are all futurists, want this to happen.
Right.
They want the
Right.
temple to be rebuilt so it can
Right.
be destroyed again, and so the Jews
Right.
can finally see.
Because they don't understand
And-
that it's already been
Yeah.
done.
It's already
And
And
been
so
done.
now they're sending their money and everything.
And they're looking, and the weird thing I see is they're looking for a future second coming of Messiah, and the Jews are looking for a future first coming of Messiah, and apparently the first coming and the second coming Messiahs look apparently exactly alike. And this is the weird thing. The Christians and the Hebrew roots, the Zionists, I'll just put Zionists, their future image of Messiah detracts everything that he did on his first coming.
Mhm.
He's no longer the King of Kings in the first
Right.
coming. He didn't come to set up his kingdom then. We're still waiting for this future king to come and take over the world. So they have bought in to the Zionist agenda of the Jewish Messiah that's supposed to still come.
Well, one of the things that I don't know that I'd say his name right, but Rabbi Zer Porat, and he became Christian, and he's got some podcasts out there. And I did not know this, but Isaiah chapter, I think 52, 53, and 54, they will not study because
They're forbidden.
It's probably not even in their Bible. In their Tanakh.
But they cannot
It's in
read it. They are not to read it because they would die or something would happen. But that's where it talks about the Messiah. And that's where it tells them what to look for. And so that's why they didn't even recognize the Messiah. Because they won't.
Yeah.
Carol, did you watch that video? I think you liked it. That I posted on Facebook, or that I shared about the Jews. This man, he was showing him the forbidden chapter, Isaiah.
Yeah.
Powerful. Did any of you guys watch that?
Which one?
Now, which one is that? Because
I don't know the name of the video, but it's like the forbidden chapter. And this man, all he's doing is reading. He goes out of the Tanakh and he goes, "Have you guys ever read this?"
It's Isaiah 53.
Isaiah 53, and it was in Jerusalem that he did this. He just went to street people and interviewed them and said, "Let's read this." And then he'll ask him, "Who does this sound like?" And they're like, "Well, this sounds like Yeshua." Like, whoa. And then they start putting two and two together.
Yeah.
Well, this rabbi that I was talking about, he went through quite an ordeal when he became priest. He was a rabbi, and he was totally disowned by his family.
Yeah.
And so his grandfather died, who was the top Dudai guy in the Sanhedrin in Israel. And so when his grandfather died, and he's been disowned, the lawyer calls him in and says to him, "Sign this paper that you denounce Yahusha, and you can have $40 million." And he says, "No, I will not deny Yahusha." Yeah. And he goes out handing out Isaiah 53.
Yeah.
They don't read that?
No, they don't. They won't read that. I didn't know that they didn't
I should not
read
go
it.
to the synagogue and start reading Isaiah 53.
You should. That's the gospel.
I should go, but
That's the gospel.
They would not like it. I would be kicked out right away.
Yeah, you did the forbidden thing. The same as saying Yahuwah. Whew. That's against the law.
Yeah,
You're not allowed to say Yahuwah or Yahweh or
sacrilegious. Something's going to happen to him. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah. That is so safe. Yeah. So, well, anyway, should we close in prayer?
Yes, let's close.
Just a minute.
Oh, we got something else.
Grandma.
That verse that says where he says that he does not dwell in temples made with hands.
Yeah, what is that?
Okay, that's in Acts chapter 7, verse 48, and it's got a reference to something that you see, he says, but the highest, all right, just a minute, let me look at it. But the highest does not dwell in temples made by hands, as the prophet says. The heaven is my home, and the earth a footstool for my feet. What house will you build to me, says the Lord, or what place for my rest? Did not my hands make all these things? O hard-necked and uncircumcised in the heart, and in the ears you continually rush headlong against the Holy Spirit, against the Holy Spirit, as your fathers, so also you. Which of the prophets, okay, then it goes on, which one didn't they kill? but he never dwelled in the temple. Ever.
When you were reading that, it just dawned on me that the Jews, when they're so focused on the temple, that's why they said the temple was heaven and earth, because because God dwells in heaven, so the Holy of Holies has to be heaven,
right?
And the earth is His footstool, so therefore all the common ground would have to be the foot. No,
he never asked anybody.
He didn't. Nobody. He didn't ask anyone to build a house.
Yeah.
Where three comes together, there He dwells.
In the midst.
Yeah.
Well, he dwells the heart of man.
Well, yes, that too. But I'm just saying, like, as when it specifically says when 2 or 3 come together. So here we are.
Yeah. He is in the midst of us.
Yeah.
And then what you read this morning. What he read this morning about the temple made with that He's building us up as the temple and Yahusha as the chief cornerstone, and we're growing up as that holy temple.
Probably why it's so important to make sure we pray before, because like he's saying, where 2 or 3 get name, if we don't announce His name before, who's gonna abide there? Whatever the Spirit wants to come in, I guess.
Yeah.
So
and we want the Holy Spirit to dwell here. Yeah.
One
of these days I want to see the glory cloud over our table.
Acts 17:24 also says,
Acts
heaven and earth dwelleth not in temples made with hands.
Acts what?
17:24.
So now we're seeing that they're preaching the gospel and they're preaching about the temple. Because in Acts, that's where you're going to find how they preached the gospel. And they were preaching about the temple, that it's not made of human hands. We don't do this in the temple. It's not about the physical temple. And we've seen in Josephus that they worshiped the temple. It was all temple.
Yes. Well, and that's why I think it's great. We're not in a building that somebody built. We're meeting in Nancy's house, or we met in that other place. And,
it's not about the cathedral.
Right.
The walls.
Right.
But Christ, being come and high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building.
Which verse?
That's Hebrews 9:11.
They're telling them this, and I guess that building was so ornate and beautiful. It was just finished.
Yeah.
It was King Herod, who built the temple. And they had just finished it before Yahushua said, and they were like, oh, look at how ornate this is, and look how beautiful is this. Right. And he says, I tell you the truth, not one stone will be left on another. I mean, could you imagine sitting there? You're looking at, let's say, skyscrapers and everything, and how beautiful.
That monstrosity sitting over there on Linder
that temple.
Road.
Yeah. There's a Mormon temple here.
You can see that. I'm
from everywhere.
When you are going.
See, I visualize a bazooka
right there before the highway. I thought it was the Capitol building at first. And Kevin's like, that's not the Capitol building. He's like, that's the Mormon temple. I was like, no idea.
Yeah, so there's a Mormon temple that just got built here. And
we don't have money to feed the hungry.
So, but anyway, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
okay, now you can pray.
Let's close in prayer. Who wants to pray? Kevin, you want to pray?
Pray for us.
We got to have you do something.
Thank you for this time we got and learn more about your word that was presented for the past. I pray, thank you for this good revelation, and I pray for a future revelation. We'll keep it going, and we'll have full understanding of your word. Understanding that overflows, as your word says, runneth over.
Thank you, Father.
bless us as we depart, and yeah, pray for protection in the week to come.
Hallelujah.
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 Yeah.
In Jesus' name. Are you sure? Amen.
Amen.
I'm going to be saying Jesus a whole lot more because I'm in a Christian school now.
It's okay. I'm learning. I'm trying to say
You're above the English here.
Yeah.
yeah.